All right. Does everyone who stopped me only a minute and 30 into this, thank you for doing that, Colin. I didn't realize that I was muted. Don't have the computer. I can only do it on the phone. Just trying to figure this out. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. I'm about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after what's starting to turn into a debacle. Now, I'm going to start this show by reading a tweet sent to me by Brett Unrau. He says, I'm so upset at Sean Reynolds for convincing me all year that the NHL Jets were legit and that they didn't need to be concerned about the Avalanche. My response to that tweet was, I deserve this. I'm your punching bag if you need me to be, because this is an all-time bad take, probably the worst take I've ever had on KNR before. And there's a lot of them, folks. There's a lot of them. You're going to have swings and misses. Some misses are bigger. This is a massively huge miss on my part. And it's not just that. It's not just the Colorado Avalanche. It's not what Casey Middlestad is turning into one of the best players clearly in this series. And I mean, it's debatable why this is happening. I mean, Zach Parise comes out of retirement and is proving to be a far more impactful player in this series than most of the players that you would expect to be impacting this series from the Winnipeg Jets. But maybe the biggest miss here, and someone had pointed this out as well, and I mean, I won't be the only guy with this. Ken Wiebe will be, painted by this brush. Probably the entire Winnipeg media will be painted by this brush. I know that if you watched our show on our picks on who we thought were going to win the series, it was a clean sweep between myself, Jeff Hamilton, Kenny Wiebe, and the flute, Scotty Billick, that we all thought the Winnipeg Jets were going to win this series. We could not have been more far off in this respect. A lot of people bringing up the fraud comments. A lot of people saying that this team, is exactly what they were last year. And at this stage, I'll say this. I'd said this throughout the year. The Winnipeg Jets weren't what they were last year. Things were different. And I think to a degree, if you finished 5th place in the league, things were different, right? You didn't almost crash out of the playoffs. So the Jets weren't the same team they were in the year before. In that, they stuck with their structure enough that they didn't completely fall out of it. And that's what allowed them to push to become the number 2 seed in the West this year. It's hard to, God, it feels like a long time ago that the Winnipeg Jets were that dominant of a team, but 5th overall in the NHL, number 2 overall in the West. So, I mean, I hope you can understand this isn't willy-nilly comments that we're throwing around. We're throwing this around based on results that ended up getting them that result, right? They didn't stumble into the playoffs as the 16th overall seed in the playoffs. They get in there in a strong fashion, and that's the things that we were seeing. But did I see this coming? This is, for all the folks out there who are saying this team is no different, you have so much ammunition right now, and maybe none more than the post-game comments that we saw from the Winnipeg Jets that I think absolutely blew me away and make the Winnipeg Jets look like a team that is unraveling. Post-game comments, Mark Scheifele volunteered at least once without, being asked specifically about it. His belief is that the Colorado Avalanche have made adjustments since the regular season, and the Winnipeg Jets have not made adjustments. To me, I don't know how you take that any other way than saying their coaches did this, our coaches have done nothing, and that's the problem that we're dealing with. He's followed up by Nino Niederreiter, who's asked about the comments of Mark Scheifele's, and he says that he thinks the Jets need a new game plan. Game 5 of a series, and your team is coming out and publicly saying that you think you need a new game plan. I'm going to tell you this. Whether or not the Winnipeg Jets have gone into this with a losing game plan, which I don't believe they have, and we'll talk about it in a little bit and why I don't think that. But if you believe that the Winnipeg Jets have gone into this with a losing game plan, even if you had that, publicly going about it and saying with one game potentially left in the season that you need to come up with a new game plan. Do you think that helps anything at all? Do you think the Winnipeg Jets are really going to establish a new game plan for Game 5 and entirely change things? Listen, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint about what coaches say in the backgrounds when you talk about these things. I've had Joel Quenneville talk to me about this. I've had Rick Bowness talked to me about this. I've had John Cooper talk to me about this. Paul Maurice talked about it a little bit before. Jared Bednar is the guy who talked about it today. You don't go in and entirely change up your systems. There are tweaks. And when you say tweaks, it's like in this system, this guy's supposed to be here. You move him over like a foot on the ice. And that's where we want you to start being. Like, the tweaks are never anything major, right? So if you're talking about having a new game plan at this stage, you're basically saying we cannot win. We can't win with the plan that we have right now. And let's be honest, there's no time to implement an entirely new game plan after this. So, or in time for the playoffs. Like, this is something that you build over the off season. You build up during the preseason and training camp and things like this. So I'm blown away by those comments. To me, I take them as players sniping at their coach in this situation here. Rick Bowness was asked about it. I'm going to be honest. I feel like this is pretty open news in the dressing room behind closed doors, because he did not seem surprised in the least that these comments were made. And his response was, how about we stay out of the box, and how about we take care of the puck, and then we can see where we're going as far as making adjustments. I think there's something to be said there. And there was a really, really good, and I don't even know, I mean, maybe you could potentially call this trolling. Jared Bednar comes in and speaks after Rick Bowness and is asked at some point about adjustments and the adjustments that they've made. And he basically plays down adjustments to saying, you play a team and there's like a couple of things there, a couple of things there. But what the Colorado Avalanche are is what they've been all year. We didn't see it. I definitely got hoodwinked by it. We didn't see it because they didn't do it in the games that they played the Winnipeg Jets. But Jared Bednar is telling you right now, this isn't anything new. This is who we've been the whole year. This is the system we're playing the whole year. And essentially he says, it's not about adjustments. It's about executing. What it comes down to is its execution. And I would say this in this situation here, and a guy like Nino Niederreiter saying this as well, goes and takes a penalty however many feet from his own net, a penalty that, and listen, I see all you out there. God bless all you folks out there right now who think the Winnipeg Jets are the better team in this series and they just can't catch a break from the refs. Like, if you're going to go up and throw your elbow at a player and then tuck his head underneath your arm in bulldog fashion and pop his helmet off of his head, you're not going to get away with that. I don't care what time of year it is. You don't go and grab a guy and rip his helmet off his head after you throw an elbow up around his ears and the refs be like, looks like a clean play to me. You don't go and do that, put your team in a bad spot. And to me, the goal that made it so that the Jets were not coming back in this game, and then turn around and say, hey, I think there's an issue with the game plan here. I would like to see the Winnipeg Jets execute the game plan in front of them. And then if it's not working, I have an idea if this is a flawed game plan. It's hard to see that right now. Just like everyone out here is, those of you who are defending Connor Hellebuyck here, and let me say this, I think you're right to defend Connor Hellebuyck. I don't really think, despite how bad his numbers have been, despite how many goals he's allowed in this, series, can you just throw up, I can't see on my computer. If you are there, do you want to throw something up just to show me if you're there? Because then I'll bring you, okay, there, Ken's right there. He's waiting to get in. So I'm going to wrap this up. But Connor Hellebuyck, it's hard to see whether he's on his game or not because there's so many opportunities that are being created where it doesn't look like he has a chance. So it's hard to look. It's hard to look at this third period and say, did Lauren Brossoit coming into the net help settle the Jets, help them play differently? I don't know, because at this stage of the game, the Colorado Avalanche are just playing defense and they're not pushing. They're not putting a lot of shots on net. So I don't know if the Jets got a push from putting Lauren Brossoit in net. So it makes it, let's just cut to the chase. I think Connor Hellebuyck's going to go in for the next game. But how do we know if the Winnipeg Jets system is working if they're constantly being beaten to pucks, if they're constantly being out hustled, if they're constantly taking bad penalties, putting themselves in a bad spot? The Winnipeg Jets in this game and in the last game for, after 20 minutes, after 40 minutes, in the case of the last game, were in a position where it was anyone's game. And then, like last game, this turns on penalties that are taken. Some of them, again, I know there's some people out there right now who are just dying over the penalties and think this is, a conspiracy against the Winnipeg Jets. You need to go out. You need to not be turning over the puck, making mistakes. Logan Stanley, this is what we're talking about, execution with the puck. Gives it away on the first goal. Boom, it's in the back of your net. You need to stop doing these things. That is not a flaw of the system that Logan Stanley softly puts a puck on the boards where it can be taken over. This is a scenario by which we cannot tell at this stage if Rick Bowness's blueprint that took the Winnipeg Jets to 5th overall in the NHL this year, we cannot tell if it is working, because we do not see the effort, or I won't say effort, but we do not see the Winnipeg Jets executing it. We see the Winnipeg Jets putting, penalties and things into the system here that is putting them in a bad spot. And because of that, I don't know how you walk out of this, but if I'm a player, I better be darn sure that I'm executing as best as I possibly can before I turn to a system that took me to top 5 in the NHL this year and say that it doesn't work. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business to get his take on the whole thing. Here comes Kenny. Ken, stop pressing it. Ken, I thought if anything could snap the Winnipeg Jets out of the funk that they seem to be in, it would have been me going in a completely different direction with my suits, the way Frankie and the boys of Vittorio Rossi took me. I've never worn anything
Spring has arrived, buddy.
Didn't think I could pull it off. I think I did.
You are.
Let's be honest. I don't think I'm pulling it off. I think Frankie and the boys down at Vittorio Rossi pulled it off. So if you think you want someone to get a little creative, help you pull something off, Frankie and the boys are the ones to do it down at Vittorio Rossi. So head on down there, walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they'll do you up right. Ken, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, sharp suit, but man, looking good. Springtime has arrived. I would just say this, though, based on what we saw today, you might not be wearing it again this spring unless the Jets get the pristine roofing wake-up call, Sean. We're just going to toss it right out there. And, yeah, it just is unacceptable, undisciplined, unacceptable, and unbelievable in some regards. So we're going to throw the pristine roofing and siding wake-up call out of the gates here.
Maybe the most important pristine roofing wake-up call of the entire year, because there's not a lot of time for more, so you know what to do. Get a hold of North End Rick at 1-204-981-6289. He's the guy to get down to your house to tell you everything you need to do with your roofing, your siding, your exteriors. You can also call Pristine Roofing as well at 1-204-237-7663. Have them down at your place. Don't forget their Pay It Forward program, in which they are giving away a free roof this year. If you know someone out there who can't afford a new roof but needs one, get a hold of Pristine Roof, tell them who it is, and that person may benefit from the generosity of Pristine Roofing this upcoming roofing season. Ken?
Yeah, in terms of the games itself, sorry. I mean, this is just absolutely baffling. Jets tied for 4th with the Florida Panthers in the NHL with 110 points. They don't even look like a playoff team right now, Sean, let alone a team that finished tied for 4th in the NHL. I know you were talking about the post game. Frustration has definitely arrived in the form of the podium here today. There's no doubt. Sorry, players were speaking in front of the backdrop. Rick was at the podium. It's a situation and a scenario where The Jets don't look like themselves. Could there be some execution on the game? I'm sorry, I don't like. I'm with you. I don't really like people blaming coaching in this situation. Coach needs to make some better decisions. There's no doubt about that. I'm not here saying Rick Bowness is pushing all the right buttons. He's not. There's going to be further changes required for Game 4. Sean, we talked about it the other day. Logan Stanley had a tough goal in the first goal. I will say this though too. I mean, Kevin Biex had a great breakdown on the. There's three things that happened there. Bad turnover by Stanley, but here's part of the reason why the turnover happened. And again, I'm not taking any of these three people off the hook here. But what happened was Vladislav Nemestikov, Sean, blocked a shot and then had to go to the bench, and the line change happened. So the reason why Alex Iafallo gets caught in between, he's not providing the support along the boards, which is what the game plan calls for. He thinks he might have to be the button hook support as the center because the center is not involved in the play. And then Nate Schmidt loses his man in front. And I mean, you can't, I don't care who it is, you can't be losing Arturi Lehkonen out in front all alone in that scenario. That play is threefold in terms of its problems and created by, a lack of communication, I think, is the best way to put it. If Alex Iafallo isn't going to be along the boards, he needs to let Logan Stanley know that he needs to look for a better option. So all three of those guys kind of fumbled that play in their own right. Whether it's the rule of thirds or not, you can hand out blame and disperse it as you see fit. But this is just another example of the Jets not doing the things that have made them successful. I mean, is part of the game plan flawed? Perhaps, but like you said, I mean, the game plan certainly seemed to look fine at a 1-1 game. I mean, they dominated the second half of the first period and parts of the second. And then much like in the third period of Game 3, the Jets came completely unraveled and unglued. I mean, Nino Niederreiter is a spark plug for the Winnipeg Jets, Sean, but you said it. You cannot take an offensive zone minor in that situation.
Yeah,
it's unacceptable. Unacceptable for any player, let alone a veteran player. Nino Niederreiter's been in the playoffs almost every single season of his entire career. Of course you want to be physical on Sean Walker, but at no point are you allowed to put a guy in a headlock and pop his helmet off and think you're not going to get a penalty. Yeah. I saw some people complaining about the first Stanley call. I'm sorry. You cannot hit a guy from behind, almost essentially tackle Nichushkin. He didn't have the puck. Yes, the puck was in the vicinity, but he didn't have it. He
wasn't facing the play either. He was trying to skate away from the play. Yeah,
he didn't have the puck. That is clearly an interference call. If you want to have a beef with the one on Duhaime, fine. But I mean, these are not like obvious misses by the referees, and you just cannot be taking these offensive zone minors. It's unraveling them. And this is very, like, Sean, the Jets aren't an undisciplined team. They're not a team that goes chasing around guys and take foolish penalties. That's not their MO. They're a disciplined team. Right now, they're not acting like one. And the bigger issue for me, and again, I understand people are all about pushback or whatever else, the Jets just haven't been able to get back to their game after giving up those power play goals. Same in Game 3. They never got back to their game at all. The Jets penalty kill has been, it has struggled big time. They've given up 6 goals and 14 opportunities, Sean, and the other goal came a second or two. Ross Colton's goal in Game 3. It's essentially 50%. You cannot win a series at 50%. I don't care what numbers you're looking at. That is not going to cut it, especially when your power play is operating at 2-4-11. That's not going to cut it. Discipline is a good place to start. And again, I understand Rick's frustration. There have been signs, but they're not even anywhere close to their A-plus game. And the Avalanche right now look like a Stanley Cup champion, or a team that's been to the top of the mountain. And the Jets right now don't look like one. They don't look like they're ready to beat one. And again, we've talked about the narrative a lot, Sean. The Jets have not won a game after a playoff loss, I think, since 2020. 2020.
Yeah, that series against Calgary.
It's 2024 right now.
That series against Calgary.
They lost Game 1. They won Game 2. They lost Game 3 and 4, right?
And they did this as well against the Vegas Golden Knights in 2018 and lost 4 straight also against someone was trying to sent me a stat, and they said they believe this is, if the Jets were to lose this next game, it would be 6 times this organization has lost 4 straight games in a playoff series. That would have to include Atlanta, I would think, because I'm counting.
Yeah, they were swept also. Yep, they were swept by the Rangers in their only chance in the playoffs. Yeah,
so I'm counting 2015, 2018, 2023, and 2021. Correct? Yes, 2021.
Yes. The 4 against the Canadians. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that's just that you can't win that way. Like, obviously, it's just very bizarre. And again, I'm not saying that they're just throwing their hands up into the air here, but you have to be able to handle adversity. They said all the right things going into the series. They said, Sean, you were there. Adam Lowry said all the right things, but the team didn't act accordingly today.
Well, Mark Scheifele says at the beginning of it, what they've learned through all the playoffs that they've gone through, essentially says what we've learned is how to handle the roller coaster. But they haven't, right? If you're that team that gets stalled by 1 loss and then you just cannot get back up afterwards. And Ken, that's been the macrocosm and the microcosm of this series. The series right now, they fell in that first game. And let's be honest, the Jets are lucky that they're like that. We're not talking about a sweep right now. We're a historically terrible goaltending performance by Alexander Georgiev away from this being a sweep. The Colorado Avalanche on paper have been the best team in this series in every single game. I don't know. I'm baffled by how far away from their game they seem to be, because for the people out there who again, and I'll go to that direction, the people who think that this is just like a masterclass in getting out coached, like, raise your hand, everybody, if you've coached a team to beating Jared Bednar and the Colorado Avalanche in the playoffs. Because it's a small group of guys, but one of them who would be holding up their hand is Rick Bowness. He's done this before. So if you just think that he's a bumbling old man, which is what a lot of people are trying to characterize him as out in social media right now, who is just getting grossly out coached and can't figure this out. I can tell you by his responses, Jared Bednar sure as heck doesn't think that.
Right.
And Jared Bednar has respect for a guy who took him out in the past in a year where a lot of people thought that the Colorado Avalanche were going to win the Cup that year and got knocked out in the second round by Rick Bowness and the Dallas Stars. But do we really think that the Winnipeg Jets had a game plan that took them to the Jennings Trophy, and that the Colorado Avalanche and their head coach have just figured out some kind of plan that absolutely makes it impossible for them to play that way? I don't buy it. I don't think I've ever seen that happen in the history of the NHL. If it is happening, then give Jared Bednar his flowers. He's one of the most brilliant coaches of all time, doing it against the most experienced NHL coach of all time. That's not what's happening here. You got to execute. And I didn't bring it up, and I sent that to you, Ken. I can't use my phone, but I sent you the quote of what Jared Bednar said when he was asked about that. And basically his thing, it almost sounded like he was standing up for Rick Bowness, where he was like, listen, at some point you have to execute. That's what you have to do.
Sometimes the adjustment is just be better at what you do. Still comes down to execution.
And listen, for anyone who thinks that he's just pulling that out at this moment to kind of give Rick Bowness a break, he's been saying that since the beginning of the series. He's been saying his team and the problems that they had were that they just weren't executing. And you need to start executing. This is, if you're not seeing this, then I'm seeing a very different series than you. If you're not seeing Zach Parise outwork people on the Winnipeg Jets, if you're not seeing Casey Middlestad doing it, if you're not seeing Arturi Lehkonen do it by 1,000, I don't know what you're seeing. But here's the other thing, Ken. I'm going to kind of switch just quickly. Go. We
got Angles in the green room ready to come.
Okay,
when
we'll bring him in right
here.
After I make this point, because I want to bring this, and he'll hear me saying this.
Yep.
And him and I talked about this, but the first period of that game, Ken, in spite of the fact that Colorado was rolling for the first 10 minutes, but then they turn it around, the first line for the Colorado Avalanche was not very good in that game. They were really careless. Nate Schmidt scores this goal because Nathan McKinnon totally blows his coverage. And you had an opportunity in this series. I've said this before. Game 2, Bad goal to start the game by Alexander Georgiev. Game 3, another bad goal to scored on Alexander Georgiev. And instead of capitalizing and building on this momentum, instead of capitalizing on the first line for the Colorado Avalanche having an off period, it's just an opportunity that the Winnipeg Jets watch fly by them. And I'm taking a look and I'm seeing a team of fully committed guys to their system on the Colorado Avalanche, outworking the Winnipeg Jets at every turn. And honestly, again, to get back to the system, if I was seeing, and there are certain players, I think Kyle Connor is having an amazing series. Just individually, I think he's playing really good. I think Josh Morrissey's playing phenomenal. But all you out there, tell me who the players are that you think are just absolutely playing lights out right now, but it's not working because the system is bad and the Jets are discombobulated. Because I see Kyle Connor really
pretty short
going.
list, yeah.
I see Josh Morrissey going. I saw Adam Lowry really going in the first game, but other than that, like you said, it's a short list. There's not a lot of people out there. That's my take on it. Anyways, we don't have music for him, which almost seems weird to bring someone into the show at this stage without having the music. But Ken, I'm going to bring in Eric. I don't see him here. Here he is, bringing in Eric Engels into the city, in here. See if we can bring him in. Ken, I'm going to let you.
I got you, buddy. Here, I got you. Hello, Eric. Double E. Well done.
Double
Come
E.
on down. Come on down.
You guys are amazing. Honestly, I've been watching your show since the beginning of these playoffs. I can't believe how engaged all your fans are and everything.
They're the best.
It's really cool to see. And it's fun to join you just as an outsider coming in, right? Like, I follow the Canadians all season long. I watched a lot of the Jets. I did a lot of research before coming in. And yeah, I mean, just everything you guys have talked about really hits. Like, Sean, like, you talked about this potentially being a sweep for Colorado, and it would have been if not for Alexander Georgiev in the first game. But I'm just like, the fact that Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen haven't had to make the difference, that's like a real concern going into this next game. Ken, you brought up the other one, which is that they haven't pushed back with a win following a loss since, I wish I had this stat before
2020.
I wrote just now, because it would have fit the narrative pretty well. The Jets have been telling us since the beginning of the series, and I'm sure they've addressed it many times throughout a very strong regular season, that they're different. There's just no evidence right now to fall back on to be able to reinforce their point. And it better come in Game 5, where the season is going to end with all the same questions being there, and potentially a very turbulent offseason, which we don't have to get into right now because I'm sure you guys will have a lot to break down.
That's garbage bag day. That's a show in itself, no doubt. Sorry, Eric, go on.
No, that's it. I'm excited to have a roundtable discussion here on this, and I'll try and keep my points brief because there's so much to say about what we've seen so far. But guys, the one thing you brought up, both of you, since Sean, you said you sent the quote over to Ken, and it was the one that really stood out to me. It's the only quote that I have from Bednar in my piece following Game 4. It is exactly that. Sometimes the adjustment is just doing what you do better, but you got to go out and execute it. And that, I don't think the Jets need to change everything about their system. I think they need to execute their game, which they haven't been able to do since the series started.
Sorry, Ken, I'm just going to ask Eric's opinion on this because we both talked about it. But Eric, I mean, I don't know how to read the comments by Mark Scheifele and Nino Niederreiter in any other way other than they seem to be calling out their coach and their system and the game plan that's been put ahead of them. And I don't know how to read the response by Rick Bowness any other way than saying, guys, why don't you do your job first and then we can talk about making changes. Let's see if what the game plan is supposed to be. Let's see if it works by trying to execute it first or not. But is that what you took away? You were in those scrums with me. You were there listening to Rick Bowness. You were there listening to Jared Bednar afterwards. But am I missing something, or did you see a team somewhat unraveling and players seemingly to lose faith in the team's system and a coach kind of calling them out for not executing the system?
I can't say that I read that deeply into it, though. It was, judging by the questions that were asked to Scheifele and then presented to Rick Bowness, like he's saying you guys clearly need to make adjustments, and Bowness is saying something different, which is like we just need to play, which I happen to agree with Bowness on this one. I don't know if Scheifele and Niederreiter, who I specifically asked, like how far or how close do you feel you are to your best game, and he said pretty far. I just think it's an execution thing more than anything. So I don't know if they were specifically trying to call out Bowness. I will say, and I got to this in my own column, every button he pushed for this game, and I have so much respect for Rick Bowness, was the wrong one. At the end of the day, you could have good intentions and everything like that, but the margins are so thin that you can't afford to make the type of mistakes that were made. You have the kid Axel coming in, and you're saying you want his speed and you want to use him on the penalty kill. He doesn't even play on the penalty kill. You make a lineup adjustment in the middle six, putting together two lines that hadn't played together for more than 10 minutes between all six players in the entire regular season, and none of that seemed to work. It was abandoned pretty quickly. And even at the end, which this felt like something a little different, not pulling your goalie when you're down 3 goals and you're going on the power play with 6.5 minutes left against a Colorado team that's firing like a wagon, like that almost – I know Rick said that he felt that there was confidence that they would score on the power play and they didn't want to necessarily risk an empty net goal given that confidence, but it felt to me like a lack of confidence in the team that it would make that much of a difference if they pulled the goalie. So there's just so much to worry about here. And in the end, whether Scheifele was calling out the coaches or his own players for execution, none of it matters. Like, they got to go out and play game 5 in a way that they haven't played in the first 4 games. Otherwise, this thing's over.
Yeah, let's because we have you, Double E, let's quickly get into Tyler Toffoli. We'll get to Monahan in a second.
Hold on. We'll get to that, Ken, but I think you need to address what Eric was just talking about there.
Sure,
the AJF thing makes no sense to me. You bring him in for the specific purpose of putting him on the power play and then never put him on the power play. And then he gets kind of bumped up the lineup. To me, this was a wasted spot. Eric's totally right about this. And it opens up a conversation I think we have to have about Perfetti after this. But
sure.
I mean, I hope it's understood that no one here is saying that Rick Bowness has been hitting every single high note and his team's just not following along. I thought we talked about it on the last show. We were expecting Colin Miller to come into the lineup alongside Nate Schmidt because there had been a lot of turnovers by Logan Stanley. Logan Stanley harmed the Winnipeg Jets today with turnovers and bad penalties. They're just and above all of that, I'm just trying to set the table for you here, Ken. But to be line blending the way that was done in this game here, game 4 of the playoffs, to the degree that we're seeing lines that we've basically never seen before. And for the entire year, you've had a third line that you will not touch, and now you break it up. I'm looking at this, and this looks beyond a Hail Mary to me. This looks like fantasy to me, that there would have been an expectation that these changes would have had the effect that they were trying to elicit.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly on Johnson Fialbi, I mean, again, we're going to get into Perfetti, and Perfetti has to be in game 5. Like, there's really no discussion here. That's probably happening with Vladislav Nemesnikov's injury as well. We don't really have much of an update other than he was being examined at the hospital in Denver, but he is probably unlikely to play based on what happened today. So that opens up the door for Perfetti anyway. I've got no problem with a coach wanting to execute or insert a player that brings speed like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, but I mean, he wasn't disruptive really. I mean, he was skating fast, but I would also say, Sean, too. I mean, I talked about Iafallo kind of in between center and wing on the first goal against. It was also because Iafallo was out there with Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, and he hasn't played a shift of them all year, and he was on his off wing. Like, he wasn't on the wing that he was supposed to be on. So, again, not assessing blame, but I mean, Rick saying afterward that he might have used on Jonsson-Fjällby before they scored in the power play, that's fine. But it's a missed opportunity. The Jets, again, I got no problem with having a defensively responsible penalty killer coming into the lineup, but the Jets are also struggling to score because guys like Ehlers are not going. Guys like Tyler Toffoli are not going. So, yes, in that situation, you should be looking at Cole Perfetti, a guy who finished the year strong. He had a massive stretch of time where he was not at his best. We know that. But you asked him to stay ready. He got ready. He scored, I think, in 4 of the last 5 games. So put him into the lineup if that's what your plan is, especially if you're making changes to the top 6, right? I mean, that's the whole point. But again, I'm also not absolving some of the other guys who are struggling. So if guys like Nikolai Ehlers were not struggling, then Rick Bowness wouldn't be tempted to break up the third line. So
you know what, Kenny? I heard something out of Mark Scheifele, and you asked me this, Sean, as to whether or not he was calling out the coaching staff regarding adjustments and not making enough of them or this or that. I thinking about it right now, I think his major frustration is the way the defense is moving the puck and the fact that it's not landing to him as much as he'd like it to be able to have the effect that he could. He's got 5 points in this series. He had 0 shots on net in this game. Like, this had to be the best game for the Jets. In my opinion, it was their worst game of the series. And where was he in this game? Like, and I'm not putting it all on him. The Jets have had a very hard time moving the puck up to their forwards. DeMello and Morrissey have been dependable. Dylan was remarkably dependable in that regard, while Pionk next to him struggled mightily. Sandberg had a good start to this game, but didn't continue through 60 minutes. Stanley, you didn't know what you were going to get from shift to shift from him. And despite making the best pass he made in the entire series to set up the goal that Schmidt scored from Appleton, like, he couldn't make any other ones that made sense. I wasn't in agreement of him playing. You guys say Perfetti needs to play. Totally agree. I think Colin Miller needs to come in potentially, and not even necessarily for Stanley, but potentially even for Pionk. Like, they need to figure this out. If they don't get the puck moving out of their end more efficiently, I don't know how Scheifele, Connor, Ehlers, Monahan, Toffoli, any of those guys that we're talking about are going to make that much of a difference for them.
Yeah, and quickly just on that, I mean, Colin Miller is a guy that, I mean, Sean and I talked both about putting him in, and I think he has to be in the next game. I understand he's only played 5 games, but you need a veteran guy who can calm things down. One of Colin Miller's, we always talk about Colin Miller's shot. One of his best qualities is his ability to get clean exits, right? That's why he's been in the league for as long as he has, aside from being a second power play guy. He's got to be in the lineup. Yes, Logan Stanley made a nice cross-ice feed to Mason Appleton on the goal. But yes, I mean, you got to use the guys. You brought in Colin Miller to be the number 7. Now, nobody anticipated Logan Stanley leapfrogging Nate Schmidt down the stretch. But right now, I think you got to put Colin Miller in. And again, I don't want to dig into this. Is another conversation for later on. But we handed out a lot of props to Kevin Cheveldayoff, who did a great job at the deadline. Sean, what was the other piece you and I called for the Jets getting at the deadline?
Yeah,
they didn't get it.
More depth defending. Yeah, and to be honest, Ken, I don't think he didn't try. I think.
I agree that he tried.
I think the fact that he went to New Jersey and got Toffoli and didn't get Miller and Toffoli together tells you that he went and got Toffoli and then went out looking for another defenseman and then couldn't find what he was looking for and then went to Colin Miller and got him, because otherwise they would have done a package deal. But this brings us to the other problem. And Eric, you and I had a little bit of this conversation when we were down here. Ken, we haven't talked about this yet. And yeah, last game I was one of the guys saying bring in Colin Miller. I think the fact that he's got a history with Nate Schmidt helps. For me, it was more about keeping Logan Stanley out of the lineup based on the way I thought that he was kind of getting exploited. But here's the problem, guys, is he's only played a couple games as a Winnipeg Jet, and every time he got there, they took him out. He's been practicing the system a long time. But Eric, you nailed it. There was a couple times Rick Bowness made changes, and 2 players went into it. Toffoli was playing with someone, and they tried to work a play with each other. Who was the other guy? You remember this, Eric, when you said, show me 2 guys who've never played with each other before based on the way that they were playing. And it's like, here we are, we're in game 4 of the playoffs, and there's 2 guys trying to figure out chemistry, and they've never been on the ice with each other before. That's what you're risking now when you bring in Colin Miller, is the guy who really hasn't played a lot under the Winnipeg Jets system or with the players. He doesn't know their tendencies. You know what it's like, Ken, when you and Eric, when you're on the ice playing with new guys and you see a guy open, you go fire it to him and it's not in the right spot. Why? Because you thought he was a lefty and it turns out he's a righty. Like, these are all the things a guy's got to figure out as he's going out and he's playing for the first time with a team, and he shouldn't be in this position. And you talked about giving Kevin Cheveldayoff credit for, and how we gave him credit for that. Credit, I always say this, it's important, and it's important we do this on this show both ways. If you're going to give credit, you also have to give the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin right now is Colin Miller's the guy that he got who doesn't seem to be able to get in the lineup. Tyler Toffoli was the guy they got that keeps Cole Perfetti out of the lineup because he was supposed to be a clutch guy scoring in the playoffs. And Sean Monahan was supposed to be the answer in the playoffs. He was in the regular season. In the playoffs as their second line center. And all three of those trades right now are aging badly when it comes to trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve. They are not getting the results they expected from those three players.
And just quickly, I mean, the tough thing for the Jets in some regards, I mean, if the reports are true, and we know the Jets were scouting the Philadelphia Flyers heavily, and they were looking at a bunch of players, including Sean Walker, who, and again, this is what we talk about. The difference between all in, the Jets pushed a lot of chips into the middle, but all in means trading a high draft pick for a guy who currently is playing on the third pairing for the Colorado Avalanche.
Right.
But was playing in the second pairing when Sam Girard was unavailable. Right now, Neil Pionk is not playing at a top 4 level. If you have Sean Walker, even if he's on your third pairing to begin with, you have someone that can give you a buffer and you can reduce Neil Pionk's minutes and put him onto the third pairing. Right now, obviously they don't feel that way about Colin Miller, or he would have been in the lineup by now. So in terms of the second line matchup, Sean, we talked about it. Sean Monahan versus Casey Middlestat. Not only did we not think it was a saw-off, we thought that Monahan had a clear-cut advantage going into the series. Sean Monahan's not close to Casey Middlestat right now in terms of how it's going in terms of production. Now, again, I don't think that's a bad trade. This is a guy who could help the Jets long-term if they can find a way to sign him. But right now, he's being outplayed by Casey Middlestat.
So I want to turn this to Eric in this, and we do have a couple of things we got to get done here, but I'm going to go to Eric with this first, because I think one of the things you have to start looking at in this series is the complete idea that one of these teams is just simply better than the other ones. And Eric, there's the guy on that second line who's probably made Casey Middlestat's job a lot easier on him since he came over. Casey Middlestat is honestly a guy that you shouldn't have known what you were going to get from him. Now we're seeing what we're getting from him. But who's the driver on that line, Eric, and why? And I don't know if you heard Jared Bednar talking about it afterwards, but in my mind, when we get into these discussions of the most underrated player in the league, I think he's sitting on the second line of the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. I mean, he might be the best playoff player that we've seen so far through the first round, and it's Artturi Lehkonen, right? Like, he's got one less goal than Nichushkin, who put one into an empty net. In his 4 straight games, he's made an impact offensively. But the details in his game are, I remember before he was traded out of Montreal, I spoke to all the scouts who would come to the games knowing that he might be on the block. And, like, you put that guy up, everybody wants him. Like, every team in the league wants that player. He's Jared Bednar, whatever he said today, he said earlier in the series when Lehkonen already had impacted it, that he's a coach's dream. And that's exactly what he is. Like, a guy with those types of details drags everybody into the fight. And in a series where, like I said, McKinnon has been good. He's gotten his points. Has he been the reason? No. Rantanen, who came off a concussion at the end of the season to join the series, has been a non-factor. He's completely. Like, I know their power play has been great, and he's on it. They've won 3 out of 4 games, and probably should have won the first one, if not for their goalie, who allowed 7 goals instead of 3. Like, you could say he's not even playing in this series. Nichushkin has been fantastic, but Lehkonen has been at the heart of it all. Talk about a couple of other Montreal Canadiens guys, Monahan, Toffoli. On one hand, you could say that this is the worst possible matchup for them against a Colorado team that is just blazing fast. But I don't know, like, if the Jets finished first and ended up playing Vegas, would we be seeing something all that different than what we're seeing so far? Like, I love those guys. Those guys are gamers, and you could just tell how badly they want to impact and make a difference. But I'm going to say this. I think this is less about the forwards who appear not to have found their rhythm in the offensive zone. I think it's more about how much trouble the Jets have had getting the puck up the ice and dealing with Colorado's forecheck. You say that the best offense is good defense, and good defense is playing really strong offense, and strong offense starts with moving the puck. And knowing that, if there's one adjustment for the Jets to make, it's not a major one, but it's one that I think could really help them. you've got to start breaking out with all 5 guys instead of trying to get ahead of Colorado's first layer because they're so aggressive and put the puck into the neutral zone and win it from there. Like, you have got to give your defensemen much better options coming up the ice because they're not being able to stretch it out and make the plays that they've been looking at. Like, I asked Brendan Nillen before he got hurt, like, is this a feature in your system that you guys try to stretch it out this much? He's like, not really. Like, typically we have very good support from our center coming down and making that option up the middle, but they need more than that. They need all 3 of their forwards back, like, so that they can come up the ice together, even if it puts them in a tougher position to break that first layer of the forecheck. Because if they don't find a way to do that, it won't matter if you're Sean Monahan or Tyler Toffoli or Mark Scheifele or Kyle Connor or Nikolai Ehlers. Like, those guys need the flow that Sean has talked about is so essential to the Jets executing their game. And we have to credit Colorado. They've been amazing. They've played exactly how they should play to win these games, but the Jets are helping them so much. And this game 4, it is without question in my mind the worst game that they have played in these playoffs.
Ken, before you move on, I just need you to give Sweet Lou a shout out, okay?
Yeah, for folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, buying, selling, curious what the house in the corner is going for, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Roll LePage Dynamic Realty. Tell him Kenny and Renny sent you. 204-791-9971 or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Get into what you were going to say there, so it didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's all good. No, and again, Monahan has been an incredible fit for the Jets, and he could solve their long-term problem if they can sign him. But right now, he just looks a little bit off too, Sean, and not just because he took a butt end to the face off the draw from Yakov Trenin. He hasn't been able to generate. And again, he had a great chance today, guys, that he just wrung it off the crossbar. I mean, that's probably the best chance he's had in the entire playoffs. But something looks a little bit off there. I'm more curious, doubly, about Toffoli. I mean, Toffoli is a guy we absolutely raved about this addition. This guy is a clutch performer, won the Stanley Cup. And we know that he's not the fleetest of foot, but what are you seeing from him? And like there are some games where he still gets to the right spots and is still dangerous, but there have been far too many times for me that his best quality is his ability to be a sniper, and he's just not getting the quality looks that he's used to getting. Do you see any reason for that so far?
Yeah, listen, he's a complementary piece. He's not a play driver, and if you want to see the most dangerous version of Tyler Toffoli, it's going to come when the Jets play Jets hockey, where they're controlling things in the offensive zone and creating their cycle, and he's able to get lost in the shuffle. Like, this is a guy, and even if you look over his career, he doesn't score a ton of playoff goals, but he scores the big ones. Like, he scores the ones where you're just like, I can't believe this guy found himself as open as he was and buried that shot. And he did it in the last game. Like, everyone was looking at him like, you better step up, and he did. But it didn't matter in the end because the rest of the Jets are not stimulating that offensive thrust that they need to play with. Like, and again, part of it is Colorado, but to me, it just keeps coming back to the same thing. Like, you have 2 defensemen in Morrissey and DeMello who have done a decent to good job of moving the puck. Dylan was doing a good job of it before he got hurt. The other 4 guys that have played in the series, even Schmidt, who was inserted to do it and scored a goal in this game, they're not capable of handling what's coming at them, and they're not dealing with it well enough. And I keep saying it, like, they need help. They need help from the forwards have to realize this isn't going to change. They're going to have to change it.
Just before we move on, I'm going to talk about I think the Winnipeg Jets, especially Mark Scheifele and Nino Niederreiter, would probably maybe they don't want to. I think they should undo the comments that they made after this, if they could possibly. I know that that's possible once it's out of the bag, but to me, this is just, you don't want to be heading into, a deciding game of a series, and being in a situation where it doesn't seem like your coach and your players are on the same page. Undoing that would be something I would be trying to do if I was a player. And hey, if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cayman Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. I just wanted to say something quick about Perfetti. You were talking about him being in the next game. I couldn't agree more. Now, I know there's a lot of people who said this last game, and I was very stern on saying I don't think that that's the case, because where do you put him, right? But that whole rant that I went on is based on the premise that you don't break up the third line, right? And if you're not breaking up the third line, the fourth line has to be a specific thing that he doesn't fit. And then who are you taking out of the top six? But the fact that they went in a situation here where they did break up the third line, which I think clearly did not pay off. It didn't have, Adam Lowry looking like the domineering Adam Lowry that we've seen at times. I think that line, that third line, is very much predicated on the idea that each guy knows exactly what they're going to be, and there may not be a more unpredictable player on where he's going to be on the ice than Nikolai Ehlers. I don't think that works. But to me, the fact that you decided to split that up and kind of get funky with your four lines, well, then I don't know how you keep Cole Perfetti out of it. So when it was based on the idea, and I think it should have been based on that idea, the Jets were down 2-1 in this series. If they go out and get a great game from Adam Lowry's line, the third line, and they erase, Nathan McKinnon, or maybe they put them on the second line to see if they can slow them down, and then Mark Scheifele wakes up and gets a couple points, and the fourth line does their thing, and the Jets win this game. Now it's 2-2, and it's a totally different discussion. It's my way of saying, if you're one win away from tying that series up, you have to go with what got you there and believe in it. But they didn't. They broke it up, and they went in an entirely new, different direction to kind of flip stuff around. Well, then at that stage, if you are getting that creative and abandoning what's worked for you, then why would you not be bringing Cole Perfetti into the lineup? Down the stretch, he was one of the most consistent offensive forces on this team when given an opportunity. To me, and this is just tied to AJF earlier on, Axel Jonsson-Fjallby, they brought him in to take up a spot in the lineup here, and that's the only thing I saw from that. If you were going to get funky and try and put people in different scenarios, if you're going to move Gabe Vilardi up or down the lineup, if you're moving Nino up, and whatever you're doing all over the place, to me it's criminal that in a series that you are starting to look like you need scoring, there is one guy on the bench who could have helped that. Now, I was all in on the idea of bringing in AJF if it was going to fix their their penalty kill and balance things out here a little bit. It didn't work, and it never had a chance to work because he never used them there. So to me, this is a wasted move. Cole Perfetti is a guy who does have the capability to spark the offense. I didn't think the way they had the lineup constructed, he could fit. But the way that they got funky with it today, he most definitely could have fit. And that's a big swing and a miss, in my opinion, on that entire thing.
Sorry, quick one here before we go. I think we got to touch on this also. What's going on with Vilardi? You guys were in the building the last two games. I was not. We expected Gabriel Vilardi to be one of the most impactful players in the series. One shot on goal, 2 attempts, and Rick Bowness did what we never thought he would ever actually consider based on how critical he has been to the power play. Jets were trying to get a power play goal late in the game. He wasn't even on the first unit.
Crazy. Eric,
he played 14 minutes today. What's going on there?
You and I talked about that. Eric, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, my thoughts are he must be hurt. Like, honestly, because he was invisible in the game. And it's pretty rare to say that about Gabe Vilardi.
Exactly.
Like, he makes his presence seen. Now, if he's not too hurt to play, then it doesn't matter in the end, right? Like, you got to be able to make a difference when it comes down to it. That's what he's being paid for. He's too good of a player not to. Look, guys, I know you're probably on the verge of wrapping this up, but I think we made it 54 minutes without mentioning Connor Hellebuck, and I'm as curious as anybody, from the outsider coming in here. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that he's played his best here, but I don't see how you blame him for game 4. I just don't understand.
Okay, hold on.
What he was, but the saves that he made on McKinnon, on Nikushkin, before Makar turned into Bobby Orr and scored that goal, when Makar scored, it made the shot advantage 27-13 for Colorado. in the first period, they were 13-1. Like, he has to make the difference, and he has to steal a game for them. But you can't ask him to steal all of them. Like, I just don't know what to make of this. What do you guys think of it?
Okay, let me jump on this first, Ken. And I said this and I tweeted this out. You want to win this series, maybe stop being outshot by double. I know the shot clock in the end balanced out a little bit because the Avs did exactly what they did in game 2. They stopped trying to score. They stopped shooting. And just when they had the puck, they held on to the puck, which probably means that there's 30 shots they would have had based on what we've seen from them that they've left on the table by not trying to shoot in the third period of games 2 and games 4. But listen, coming into this series and seeing what we saw from Alexander Georgiev, if you're going to come in here and almost everyone in this chat room is guilty of it. Almost everyone in the media is guilty of it. Almost everyone in the Jets organization is guilty of it. If you're going to come in here and pile on the praise that Connor Hellebuyck is the best goaltender in the world, then a night like tonight, Eric, I think, and you said it before the game, a night like tonight is a night where he needed to come out and steal the game. And I'm not saying he played bad, but that shot that is scored on by Cale Makar, I mean, it's a great shot. And usually he gets beat on great plays, but this is a night, and we joke that my brutish stat is the Sean Reynolds stat, like the Corsi, the Reynolds, is which goalie was better tonight. On this night, I don't care how many more shots he faced, Alexander Georgiev was the better goalie on this night tonight. I don't think he was in any of the other games in this series, but Georgiev was there and was a backbone for that team tonight at every moment they needed him to be. And Connor, at some point, I said this before, numbers take over. We can't just keep saying that every shot that beat Connor Hellebuyck was the perfect shot and he couldn't have possibly stopped it. And he stopped a lot of nice shots in the process of losing that game. You needed Connor Hellebuyck to be otherworldly, which he's been on a lot of nights this season and seasons past, and you did not get that from him on this night. So listen, Connor Hellebuyck is going to be in net for the next game, but this is just another example, and we're headed towards, Ken, we've talked about this before. This is now another time that Connor Hellebuyck is going to go into a series, and he's going to lose the series. You're going to add Alexander Georgiev to the name of the goaltenders that have outdueled Connor Hellebuyck in a playoff series. And at some point, you have to take a look and say, if you want to say this is the best goaltender of a generation, he's got to show up, and he's got to show up stronger in a series like this than he has in this series.
Yeah, he's got to make a few more saves. I mean, today I didn't have an issue today. I mean, Lekkonen's goal is wide open in front. The Makar play, I'm sure you guys saw the replay. I mean, in real time, you think, oh, you got to make that save, and then the back angle that they show where Nate Schmidt thought he had it blocked. Cale Makar completely just changes the angle like Connor Bedard does. And Connor, I don't think he could see it. And then it was also bar down. So, and then the power play goal, I mean, it's guys wide open in front. It gets tipped to him. So, I mean, that I don't have an issue with any of those goals. But yeah, I mean, it's simple. He was making saves and keeping them in it, and then the Jets just capitulated when they were shorthanded. I mean, that's what I saw. And yeah, the reason why Rick pulled him was this is a mercy pull, so he can play game 5. But yeah, he's got to be. Again, I'm with you, Double E. We talked about this. If the Jets want to win the series, Hellebuyck's got to steal at least one game.
There's nothing wrong with what Sean just said about Connor.
I know.
Like, everything that he just said is absolutely accurate. You cannot turn away from that. He isn't the reason that they're losing these games, but he can make the difference in games where, like, if he is as good as everybody knows him to be, like we all have seen throughout his career,
for sure,
he has to be able to make the difference. Like, I don't think in game 4 he could have. Honestly, the way the Jets played, I don't know if I would say the same thing in games 2 and 3, but in game 4, like, I don't even think Carey Price at his best would have turned that into a win for the Jets. So, like, I just, now all eyes are on him. All eyes are on the Jets and whether or not they have the pushback that they've been saying that they've had from beginning of the season to now. Like, we had Rick Bonus's quote. Day 1 of the season, they came in ready to prove and this and that. And I wrote in my piece today, it's day 200. Like, where were they? where were they? Like, they have to be so much better in front of him, and he has to be the best goalie in the world for the rest of this series and whatever else happens. So, and if none of that happens, if they're not there the way they should be, and if he's not the way he should be in terms of being like a superhero here, this thing is going to be over in 5 games, and nobody's going to be able to say on the Jets that it's different than last year.
Yeah, the Jets need above average to elite goaltending. They haven't had that in the series. That's what Sean was saying, and he's 100% right. But Double E, like I asked you when you were leaving the rink, what's the last hard save we remember Georgiev making, Sean? I've been watching at home. You guys were in the building. I don't remember a hard save that he's had to make in the last 2 games, essentially. They're not getting to the hard areas.
Maybe one on Connor in this game, but nothing.
There was one on Connor that was actually a really, really good shot. There was the flurry that he makes at the end of the second period in the last game, the sliding across.
Sure, Scheifele double had one
hand.
But yeah,
and listen, I'm not. I don't know. Are people out here taking my comments as though I'm saying Alexander Georgiev has been this phenomenal? Because Ken, I'm not making fun of you. There's people out here in the chat room who are like, trying to make that leap there. But I'm telling you right now, if you're going to ask me which of these 2 goaltenders was the better goaltender on this night, I think Alexander Georgiev was the better goaltender on this night than Connor Hellebuck was. So,
Sean, you asked Rick Bowness at the end of this game, what do you have to hang your hope on here? And he brought up a 10-minute stint in a 60-minute hockey game.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, like, I hope the Jets.
Well, to be honest, like, sorry, Eric, you froze. I thought you were done. Continue on there.
No, I'm just saying that's harrowing. I hope there's a lot more than that. Like,
yeah, just for context,
game. Like,
high dangers today at 5-on-5 or 14-4. So, I mean,
yeah. But again, if we're going to say that you got the best goaltender in the world, I mean, there's been Dominic Hasek did it. Patrick Waugh did it. Marty Brodeur did it. Eric, you saw Carey Price do it how many times in your time covering? Like, at some point, if this is what we're going to say, if we're going to go into the playoffs every year and say the Jets have a marked advantage in net, at some point it's got to show up in a game like tonight. Okay, we can't just say the high danger stats went in that way and forget about it. At some point, he's got to elevate his game and make it happen. I haven't seen that in this series. Anyway,
Shane Watson, how can this be the case at this time after what the Jets went through this year? How can they still be a fragile team?
That's the question I have, because honestly, I picked them to win this series in 5, and part of it is I underestimated Colorado's depth. Which was easy to do considering the way they finished the series, but I also may have overestimated how tightly bonded this Jets team was. And that's like the part that's really tripping me up. Like, you guys watched it all year and you saw that bond form. And I thought even from afar that it was obvious. They looked, with the changes they made in personnel and the depth, and I thought Chevy did a great job. Like, from start to finish, I think Rick did a very good job uniting a room, or at least leaving it to itself to unite. All of that is being tested now. Like, it's easy to sit here and say none of it has changed because they haven't offered any evidence that it has. But they still have an opportunity to. And if you're a Jets fan out there that wants to have some hope, it's not on the freaking 10 minutes that we saw in this game. It's got to be based on what they actually have within their team that can combat this narrative. And they better show it now. Like, this is the time to show it. If not now, it's never. And like I said, that offseason is going to be more than tumultuous if they don't. If they go down in Game 5 the way they did in this game, then there's nothing they could say that would make anybody feel like there was a big difference between what happened last year and this year.
I can't argue with that. I mean, I'll say this. How can they still be fragile like this? I mean, to me, the post-game comments I take as fragility, right?
Oh, no, I agree that they are fragile. I'm just wondering, with what they have endured, it's hard that they are feeling fragile in this moment. I mean, they should be hardened. They've gone through a lot. They've got lots of scar tissue from over the years. This is what hardens you as a team, going through those things. And right now, they're not showing as much resolve as they need to.
I guess I would just respond like this, because I remember when at the beginning of the playoffs, when we talked to Mark Scheifele and he talked about what he's learned. So this is the exact conversation we're having right now, Ken. What he's learned in their past playoff performances that he takes into this, and he had talked about the idea of riding the roller coaster, right, and doing a better job of managing those emotions. And when he said that, I thought to myself, it's a good thing for him to be talking about, because I take a look at that and I think it's the one thing that has always eluded this team. So I thought the fact that he was talking about meant that they'd really turned their eyes and their heads and their thoughts towards exactly this. And they have shown in this series that all those lessons, and maybe it's a hard lesson to learn, right? I'm sure it is a hard lesson to learn. Does it look like the Jets have learned it? It does not. And nothing says that more to me. That, hey, I'll say this, Eric, when you go and you listen to the way Jared Bednar talks after games, the way that Nathan McKinnon talked in the days after that Game 1 loss, the way that all those players talked about it, you just got a feeling of a team that, like, if there was a team that wanted to crack and throw their goaltender under the bus, there it was. Your goaltender just gave the other team a victory, and they had him so supported. They had his back so well. And here we are, the Winnipeg Jets get into a pickle here. And what I'm hearing from the players is that they are straying from what their coach is saying, that they're clashing with what their coach is saying. The fragility, that to me is showing fragility. When you can't stay together and win or lose regardless by staying together, that to me is fragility. And that's why the Jets are in the position they're in right now. And quite honestly, being completely, totally outclassed and destroyed in this series. Ken, we got to move on.
Very quick one. You guys were there. Sean, Brendan Dillon update. Rick actually said today that he thought there was a chance he could play Game 5. Are you guys buying or selling on that?
I think he'll play. And as I saw him leaving the building, I actually didn't notice if it was well covered. Good for him, but I didn't even notice a bandage on his hand. So
okay.
To me, this is still up in the air. I was saying to Eric, I had a similar cut like that where it kind of pops wide open. It looks like a big bloody eyeball on my ankle. And 6 days later was playing in a junior A hockey camp with that. So when it's just the skin cut, it doesn't take that long. But what they need to make sure is that the skin has somewhat healed to the point that it's actually stitched itself and that it's not just being held together by glue or by stitches. Because the thing about this, even with them down 3-1, you need to conduct this injury as though you're going to the Stanley Cup final. And what that means is if you break that cut open all over again by playing in the next game, then you probably have to sit the game after that. It needs to be healed so that it's not busting open and bleeding. Hey, Red Sox, Kurt Schilling did this, but he did it with just a couple games left, and he just went out knowing that it was gonna rip open and bleed. He only had a couple more games to get through. If you're the Jets, you have to conduct yourself like you've got 3 more games in this series, and then 3 7-game series after that needs to hold up.
I disagree. I think he's gonna play.
You think he'll play regardless?
Yeah, I think I go back to listen.
Hey, Eric, sorry, before you go on, I'm just going to say he wanted to play today. The doctors said no.
Of course.
Okay, so the doctors still have the ability to hold him out of this, and I'm saying it needs to be medically cleared before he can get there.
I think they'd have to tape him to his bed to make sure that happens in the next game with them facing elimination. I'm just going to say that Shea Weber in 2021, if it was up to the doctors, wouldn't have been playing any of those games. It ended his career. Carey Price in 2021, if it was up to the doctors, wouldn't have been playing any of those games, and it ended his career. And I'm telling you right now, like Brendan Dillon, maybe the doctors have the final say, but they might have to kill him to keep him off the ice in the next game.
Hey, one quick thing, though, on that, Double E. Brendan Dillon's a unrestricted free agent this summer. Those two guys had long-term big tickets that they could LTIR retire on.
Yeah, that's something to consider.
And I'm not saying that that's a consideration for Brendan. He wants to play.
Yeah, like knowing Brendan, like...
No, I'm just saying that's the difference in the scenario. I'm not saying that would preclude him from wanting to be in there and being in there.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, Ken, you got a candidate for Johnson Group. Got you covered. Play the game.
Honestly, not many team plays in the game, but it's got to go to the Jets medical staff on this one, guys. In consecutive games, they had somebody in a pool of blood that needed to be handled quickly, and I thought that. And also, shout out to Sean Bartlett for knowing what the emergency sign was on the broadcast here, and seeing that Rob Millette had gave it to the bench in terms of getting back more support there medically. For Vladislav Nemestikov, who took that slap shot from a teammate that rid up the stick of Andrew Cogliano and caught him what looked to be in the, I don't know, cheek or ear. I'm not 100% sure, but that looked like a scary moment. And it must have been, especially for you guys in the building, that's a sound that I still hear the sound of Brian Little taking that puck in the head, guys.
Yep. That's
and
snap. Yes.
That's very scary. And again, I'm not saying it's the same thing, and you hope for nothing but the best for Vladislav Nemestikov, but we're going to give it to the Jets medical staff here, who is very, very busy in the last two games here, doing excellent work with both of those players.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll hand that to you, Ken. I think you nailed that. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Eric, keg save of the game. Is there a save that stands out to you that would be worth handing out $50 gift certificate to the keg to someone out there? Is there a save worthy of that?
I mean, it's tough not to give it to Gergiev, but it's the one that Hellebuck made on McKinnon before Makar scored that goal. Like, a one-timer situation there's not a lot of goalies who would make that save. Like, that was a phenomenal save. You got the toe out. I can't remember on which player right before that. Was it Nikushkin? Anyways, I wish I could point. It's all running through my head at the same time here. It was on Middlestat, that save that he made with
yes.
Man, it's crazy that we got to give it to. It's crazy we got to give it to Hellebuck. Like, he's out of the game at the end of the second period, but like Ken said, like, is there one you could think of that Gergiev made where you were like, whoa, he just totally kept them in there and saved this game? Like, the one of the worst parts of this game for the Jets was they tie the game 1-1, they get a power play, and they get one shot on net on that power play. Like, that was a horrible power play. Like, that's killer.
Hey, I will say this. People keep asking about Georgiev. If we talked about the Kyle Connor save that he made there, this is one of those ones that, and this will let's give some ammunition to the people in here who are trying to make it sound like I'm making Alexander Georgiev to be the Vezina winner here. But that save that he makes on Kyle Connor when he's coming down the wing, you've seen this a bunch of times, Ken. That's Kyle Connor's spot. Kyle Connor's got a spot right over the pads that he shoots at. He scores on it quite consistently. It's a save by Alexander Georgiev. At the time, Eric, you'll remember, I went, whoa, that's a great shot and a great save when he shoots that puck. The reason is because the puck coming off his stick is absolutely flying, but also because I've seen this from Kyle Connor a lot. This is a Kyle Connor special, and this is one of those ones that you – give Georgiev credit for what he did in this game. That's one of those saves that looks like it's boring and doesn't look like it's much of a chance. It's also one of those shots from Kyle Connor that has beat a number of goalies over and over again this year. But I'll go with you on the Helly one. You okay with
McKinnon save. There was one crazy one off the shoulder that I think he's talking about the same one. I mean, that's one of the classics. Eric, you've been seeing what we've been seeing all year long. He makes the very difficult save look routine. That's the one that I liked.
No doubt. Hey, it doesn't matter what, even though Eric nailed it here and Ken nailed it, and I took part. I took part in this. You should take part. Share with us your hashtag, the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And the winner of the keg save of the game, Ken, who would that be?
Whoops, I had, Savage 9100 I have for the keg here, Sean.
Savage 9100. You know what to do, Savage 9100. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email, and I will send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last, which brings us, and I got to say, I'm kind of delaying a little bit because our chat room is at, the amount of people
Oh,
watching
it's
right
very
now
close,
is at
yes.
2,978, 22 more people, and I believe we would crack 3,000 for the first time, Ken. So I've kind of been delaying, trying to add it here. Oh, there, 15 people just left because they got sick.
Long live afternoon games.
I was going to say it's the double E effect. It's the double E effect. A couple of our folks from Montreal coming on in.
Our most watched show ever on the Kenny and Renny show was the Montreal edition with Eric Engels on it.
And John Morosi. And John Morosi also.
And John Morosi as well. Okay, so TCB, that TCB lamplighter of the game. What was the best goal of the game for you, Ken? Or sorry, yeah, let's start with Ken.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, obviously the Avalanche goals are more important, but just this is what I talked about in the Ken Says in our warm-up game day newsletter was get the second wave involved. So the Nate Schmidt goal is everything that the Jets haven't really done in the series, but finally did. So finding the trailer, Mason Appleton. Rick, how many times you guys hear Rick Bowness say you got to spread out the ice in the last 3 days? Yeah. How many times?
Yes.
Like the over-under was high. Getting the puck wide, Stanley to Appleton, entry. I mean, again, this is also Jets were fortunate is not the right word, but it was too inconclusive to overturn. But I think that Kyle Connor might have been offside, but there was no, because Mason Appleton had the puck on his backhand, the puck was covered. You couldn't see where it was. Regardless, the way the Jets were able to involve the defenseman, get a goal from Nate Schmidt, who obviously has been scratched a ton down the stretch and got, bypassed on the depth chart. He got himself ready, got in there, buried his shot. Now, having said that, he also missed a primetime opportunity early in the second, guys, before things unraveled for the Jets. Shifley fed him in a similar situation. Yeah, laser beamed the shot over the net on that one there. But again, I think Nate Schmidt's goal for me is the lamplighter. But again, tons of candidates in the game overall.
Ken, hold on a sec.
Sorry, I hadn't mentioned the play at all. I needed to get that one in there. That was my long-winded way of meandering into the miss. But I'm giving him the goal for the goal.
I don't get to do this often, but when I get a chance, Eric, I take it every time. Ken is completely and 100% wrong on this. What was your goal of the game?
Well, Nichushkin scored 3.
We're getting close to the end of the year.
The goal of the game belonged to Arturi Lehkonen.
It did it ever.
The play that Middlestad made after Stanley gave the puck away, that was an elite play and a perfect finish from a guy who's probably the last guy on Colorado right now that you should leave alone in front of the net. And I hate to put it on Schmidt, who's caught
his man
in a hard place, but he's nowhere near Lehkonen on the play, and that's his guy. That was, to me, if Colorado doesn't score after a 13-1 run, 12-1 run in shots, who knows how this game actually turns out in the end, with Winnipeg scores first. So, to me, that's the goal. That's the big one of this game. It might not have been the prettiest one, but it was the play that was made was the best one in the game, and that guy is unstoppable. He's so good.
If it's the score of the game, maybe the TCB lamplighter score of the game is the fact that we just passed 3,000 people watching this show right now and still climbing. Eric, you and I are good friends, and because we're this good of friends, I feel very comfortable in saying you're completely and totally wrong as well. There's only one answer to this. It's Cale Makar. Cale Makar goes from end to end, and not only does he score, but that's a back-breaking goal at that moment of the game. He doesn't score that goal, and this may be a little bit of a different game. The nail in the coffin was Nichushkin scoring on the power play on the Niederreiter penalty, but I think it almost felt like when Cale Makar scored that goal that this series ended with that goal. So it was a nice try. Swing and a miss for the two of you. Good job.
That was an abusive goal. They're going to call icing. They don't call it. He's just whatever. I'll just go through everybody on the Jets and rip it in and then celebrate like Joe Sakic. It's my job and I score these goals all the time and no big deal. And he called it lucky after the game.
Yeah.
The only lucky part was Lowry stabbed it away from him except he was still in position to keep going with the play and make the play that he made. That was absurd. There's exactly one player in the game who could do what he just did, and he's the guy.
And Sean, that was or like that goal was or like, by the way.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise, Ken. Surprise, surprise. Eric, you actually pulled it, and I like with the shot. I was thinking, I don't know about that shot, but you pulled it. He changes the angle, not so he's got the puck held away from his body, like 2 feet from his body. And what he does is he turns and spins towards the net. But as he does so, he pulls the puck in tighter to his skates before he shoots. And what that does is it changes the angle of the shot, and it makes that top corner far side open when Connor Hellebuyck didn't think it was, and it wasn't. From where he originally has his stick, he changes the stick position, which opens up that far corner. He does it without even looking, in kind of like a kind of half spinorama kind of motion. It is really it is so hard to. Oh, Ryan Whitney, I think it was. You had pointed out to me, Ryan Whitney, points out what went into scoring that goal. That is an amazing goal. That is. I
would never. Ever, Sean, sorry, I'm really sorry. I would never, ever blame that goal on Hellebuyck, but I will say this, and it's a very brief story. I was once writing a piece about how different Hasek and Carey Price were, like, in their primes.
Yeah.
And how Hasek had the ability to bait you into shooting into certain areas of his net, and he'd just take it away.
Right.
And I remember talking to Carey about this, and him saying, you can't do that anymore. Like, third and fourth liners shoot as well as top six forwards.
Right.
And the minute you start guessing, even if your greatest skill is anticipation, and I think we all know Carey Price's greatest skill was that ability to read the play and anticipate. The minute you take a guess, you're screwed. And like, I'm not saying Hellebuyck guessed on that play, but part of him was inclined to believe that the shot that was coming was different than the one that was taken.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why some people were like, wow, he's got to have that.
Yeah.
To me, I can't sit here and say he's got to have that when a guy like Cale Makar beats the entire Jets team and scores that way. Like, but it brought me back thinking about that moment with Carey and talking to Dominic Hasek for that piece about what he was able to do and just how even the guys who are so strong in their movements and amazing at anticipating play like Hellebuyck is, it is a dangerous game against the best players in the world, let alone the guys who are on third and fourth lines who can shoot the lights out anyways.
Just insane. Anyways, that's our, like, let's be honest, Renny with the win on this one. I needed a win, guys, but Renny gets the
congratulations.
Win on this one. I love how I said it, and then Eric just kind of kept making the point for me, so I appreciate that. We got to have you on more often here, Eric. Lamplighter winner, hey, if you share with us, there is no wrong answer as long as you hashtag TCB, share your Lamplighter with us. You do that, you're automatically entered to win a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your 8-pack, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company at 11290 Kenniston. You can join them in their tap room where the food's amazing, environment's amazing, people are amazing, and so much beer. As you'll find out when the season ends, 2 Mondays after the season ends, the Kenny and Renny year-ender, where we promise we will send her. Get ready for that, folks. It may be coming a little earlier than a lot of us thought. Lamplighter winner from the last game. Who would that be, Ken?
Matthew Hyman is the winner.
Matthew Hyman. Great job, Matthew Hyman. You know what you got to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me your email. I will send you a voucher for a Frosty Delicious, or an 8-pack of Frosty. I'm falling apart here, guys. I'm going to start that one again. And scene. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me your email. I will send you a voucher for an 8-pack of Frosty Delicious Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. It is the nectar of the gods. Couple things I want to do before we go here. I'm having too much fun for us to just leave here. But guys,
overtime, baby, overtime.
Right now, I saw a lot of people, a lot of Jets fans doing victory laps on the, bit of a trash can fire that the Leafs have turned into. Which of these two teams are in a worse spot right now? The Toronto Maple Leafs or the Winnipeg Jets? Like, who's worse right now? What's worse?
Well, they both have had, one win since 2018. One playoff series win since 2018. So who's in a worse spot? Which is the tougher hill to overcome?
I know that a lot of
What's the question? What's the question?
What situation is worse? Do I need to ask it again?
You know what the worst part is how similar they are.
There
Like
you go.
the worst part is that the scar tissue, which runs deep for both teams, hasn't healed to the point where you're seeing either of them being able to overcome this troubled history and past. Like you can change. There's a lot of changes that were made in Toronto. There's a lot of changes that were made in Winnipeg. And yet this narrative becomes overwhelming and confirmed because so many of the core members remain in place and have and carry those scars. And Canada's a tough place to play. Even with three nice guys like us in the media, it can be hard. We're telling the truth here about what's going on. And let's be honest, even the three of us, with as informed as we are, we're not there. We're not behind the scenes. We're not in their room during the tough moments or even the best ones. And there's things that we're going to miss. And they have the right as players to look at us and say, you guys think you know, but you don't have a clue. But one thing we do know here, and yes, I agree with Terry, the Leafs are definitely worse than the Jets are in this regard. They're kind of the kings in the model organization for not getting over your scars or having them heal. But like, if the Jets, that's the thing that I just keep being left with here. If they bow out of these playoffs in a year where it looked as though they were so ready to conquer that narrative in the same way they did last year, there is nothing that they can say that will change the way anybody looks at them. And that to me is the note that you guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, on how it ends, because if that happens, and I'm not saying it will, maybe what they do in game 5 is come out and do what they said that they are capable of doing, which is pushing back, proving that they're resilient, and all of a sudden they've responded very well to their losing streaks this year. But if they don't, one thing they should learn from Toronto is not running it back with the same exact core and expecting a different result. Like, because that issue is really building up, and it's not something that's strengthening them at this point.
Hold on, Ken. Hold on. That is going to be a massive topic of the show where we break down garbage day, because I've got tons of thoughts on that, but it'll get to that point. Ken, you go.
I'm going to go briefly here. It's the Leafs because the Leafs don't defend. They haven't defended since the Austin Matthews era has started. The Jets were just the best defensive team in the NHL. Now, having said that, that probably makes it worse that they've been lit up to the degree that they have offensively. But the structure the Jets have is what the Leafs are looking for. Now, having said that, I mean, it's not even a wash. They're both in a position where they're not going to be happy if they're both out in the first round. So I would say the Jets are slightly ahead because they have been able to sort out. Their Jets' biggest issue was defending, and they just won the Jennings Trophy. So, but the issue is that hasn't translated into the playoffs. So,
the tough part for both of these, like the way these situations mirror each other, is it's just the same problem, right? Like, yep. I went on the show before that, and Ken, it's so funny. I was talking to someone. I picked the Leafs in 7, and the entire time I gave all the reasons why I shouldn't be picking the Leafs. And the main one was their culture stinks, and Boston's got good culture. And what we're seeing in that series is we're seeing the culture of the Leafs unravel, and we're seeing the culture of the Bruins hold together. And that's what's frustrating for Leafs fans, is because they're sitting in there watching the same problem happen over and over again, which is where the Winnipeg Jets are. We're seeing the same problem happen over and over again with the Winnipeg Jets. I would think, like, the Jets lose 3-1 and the Leafs lose 3-1 and everyone's kind of blowing their minds out about it. Eric said it. I'd said it here. I think you said it too, Ken. This was a sweep. This series was a sweep, with an absolutely falling flat on their face performance by the goaltender of the Colorado Avalanche. Swept by a team that you dominated in the regular season, and in a fashion where your goaltender, who's supposed to be the best goaltender in the playoffs and not get scored on very often, is getting lit up at a ridiculous pace on a team that was the best defensive team in the NHL this season and now can't defend. The Winnipeg Jets have been totally turned inside out by the Colorado Avalanche. This is a guy getting jerseyed in a fight and skating off the ice with his hands up in the air and his jersey still over his head right now. It's a tough situation here.
I'm dying. I'm dying because I started this series coming to Winnipeg and writing a piece that said the biggest reason why I believe the Jets are going to win this series and I quoted Pierre Dorion, is because they're a team. Like, they play a team game better than any other team. And they have not done that at any point of the series, and it's killing. I called them in 5. I called the Leafs in 7. And I called Dallas to beat Vegas. And right now I'm feeling very concerned about all of those suggestions. So whoever just said that I have the truth here,
Eric,
I've diluted. Like, there's nothing wrong.
Eric, people come to this show for analysis, and you're really hurting our cause, especially because I agreed with all those takes that you just had before the playoffs start. Ken?
One more quickie here before we roll, just because we have you, Double E. On a weekend or a week where we've been celebrating Bob Cole, I think we got to go around the horn here. I know that you guys have a little bit more close-knit stories than I do, but I'm going to share a quick one. And it encapsulates what has been spoken about by so many people who have known him so well. Bob Cole's ability to be the soundtrack of our lives was absolutely incredible, but the beauty of Bob is that he didn't need a lot of words to get you where you needed to be. My experience with Bob Cole, 2016 Western Conference Finals, St. Louis versus the San Jose Sharks. The series is 2-2. We are standing in the Zamboni area at Scott Trade Center. I was there before Bob. Bob saunters in. I said, "Good morning, Mr. Cole." "Morning, Ken." And he used 2 words to describe what was happening. Big one. All he says, big one. That's all he needed to say. The series is tied 2-2. He said 2 words. The next 2 games were won by the San Jose Sharks. They went to the Stanley Cup final for the first time. He didn't need to go into all the matchups. He didn't need to go into anything else. He said 2 words. It made me smile. It makes me smile to this day. And that is my utter beautiful Bob Cole moment from that 2016 playoff.
What do you got, Eric?
Like, I wish I had something more specific than going out for drinks with Bob and Sean in his second to last game, called in Winnipeg. A week later, he was in Montreal. I caught up with him in the Montreal room, just seeing the way the players revered the guy. Like, they, Sean mentioned this the other day. They stuck around their lockers when they saw him walking in. Like, they could be on their way out of the morning skate, and they stuck around just hoping he'd come say hi. He had that kind of aura about him, and that's remarkable for like someone like me working in Montreal for 16 years and growing up around the Canadians. Like, I don't want to say he's on the same level in that respect as like Jean Beliveau, but he did kind of garner that type of attention where, like, you see him coming and walking down the hallway and you stop and just say, "Oh my gosh, that's Bob Cole." And if any of us are lucky enough to leave that type of legacy down the line, which I think would be pretty hard to do, we've probably lived and worked the right way. Like, Jean Beliveau for me is of a class of his own. But I'd like to think in an ideal world that Bob Cole is sharing a drink with him right now, because he's not out of place at his table if that's where he is.
No doubt. Ken, the big one, great story because it just gets to how Bob Cole, with, like you said, almost the shortest amount of words you could possibly use, could say so much more with those 2 words than you could say with a novel, right? And that was the beauty of him, or one of the things that he was able to do, the way that he was kind of able to encapsulate. Ron McLean always said he sang the game, right? The crescendos always came at the right time, but he could say so much with so little. He could say it with the lilt in his voice. Someone was saying earlier on that Bob Cole, really good announcers can make a broadcast better, but almost no announcer in the history of the game could actually make the game better. The game was better being called by this man than like, you were almost better off at home watching it on TV than you were being in the rink, because the way that he called it actually made the game better for me. The 2002 Olympics are the one that sticks out most for me. I know people's got to have it all over the place. I heard the Lemieux splitting the defense goal live. That was crazy. I was on the broadcast where the Jets exploded against the Penguins and Blake Wheeler had a hat trick, and that's when he said, "Everything's happening." And this was him in the twilight of his career. And that line, "Everything's happening," 2 words, just made that come alive, because it was just, there was so much going on and it just made it come alive for me. I just want to say this to your point about like when he walked into an NHL room, there's a lot of egos in NHL rooms. And when Bob Cole walked into the room, he instantaneously, and you could feel it. You could feel it with the most egotistical guys in that room. They turned, and Bob Cole was now number one in that room. Crazy power to do that. And just a quick personal story. I'll get out of the way. I've shared it on Twitter. Like Eric said, I had the honor of being on the broadcast crew, being the host of the second last game Bob Cole ever did. And we went out and shared drinks afterwards, and he was phenomenal about it. One of the most amazing nights of my life. But I've talked about some of the biggest moments of my career. Ken, you know what it was like to be on Hockey Night in Canada for the first time last year. One of the top 3 moments of my career, and it wasn't even that big of a game, but I did my first broadcast with Gary Galley and with Bob Cole. And in the first moment where I went and kind of towards right before I was supposed to go on, they said to me, hey, Bob Cole wants to say some of the stuff that you're saying you're going to have to change. And it's like, you change if Bob asks you to change. So I rewrote everything in my head, went and did my thing. It was kind of like walking out onto a tightrope. Barely pulled it off, somehow pulled it off without a hitch, threw up to Bob Cole and the anthem, came out. I'm Bob Cole with Gary Galley and Sean Reynolds. And the way he said my name, shivers went up my spine. My hair stood up on end. I'm talking about it right now. It's happening right now. Him saying my name, hearing Bob Cole say my name was... I don't know that it gets much better than that in a career. And that just shows you the power of a guy like that, saying those 2 words to you, uttering my name out loud, spending some time with us, Eric. That guy took everything and cranked it up to 11 in everything that he did. And he did it effortlessly and with class at all points. What a man. What a man. Anything anyone's got to say before we go?
Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
In Bob Cole's way, yes or no question for both of you. Did the Jets win Game 5?
I'll say yes because I picked them in 6, so it's got to yes.
You got to keep it short. You say yes.
No. I don't know that you go out and have the public thing that's happening between the coaches and the players at this stage right now. I don't know how you recover against that, against a team that is just fully in with each other. But hey, you were just talking about some of our playoff picks. I wouldn't be putting any money down on what Renny's saying anytime soon.
I'm not making it. I'm just saying I'm not making a prediction because mine have been wrong. I just can't wait to be back in the whiteout, and I hope I'm there at least one more time after this one.
Well, thanks for forcing us to go on the record with a pick and then totally bailing out and not making one.
That was really the value of asking the question. That was the value of being the guy asking the question. I don't have to offer my own opinion.
I'm the guy who asked the question.
What I hope is to be in the whiteout more than once more this year.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, that's it for us. Eric, you absolutely rocked it.
Appreciate it.
People were saying it. You brought this show to life. We go through this. We're going to have you on we got to have you on for Game 5 as well. Just got to do it because this was actually a tough game and this somehow turned into a really fun show. And you're a big part of that. Ken, you're a big part of it as always as well. Chat room, you were rocking it. I'm going to get this computer fixed so I can get back to highlighting your comments more often. And I will say this, as I always do before we shut this down. If you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, I implore you to appreciate the contributions by our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, the Johnson Group, the Keg, and of course, TransCanada Brewing Company. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to all of you. It's not over yet. Got to wait for the fat ladies to sing, everybody. And that means we will be chatting with you again. Maybe it will be over by then, maybe not, but we will chat with you regardless after the game on Tuesday. Can't wait to see you then. Bye, everybody.